Hey everybody, welcome to a Week 5 edition of the West Coast Best Coast Football Show. Your take inside what the former Pac-12 teams are doing in their new respective conferences in this new wave of conference realignment. And you know what? Let's actually start there because there's been a lot of news. I did an emergency edition. A lot of it was based around the UNLV situation and Matthew Sluka, their quarterback, who elected to redshirt the season after 3 games. They start 3-0. He was promised some money and he didn't get it, so he's trying to preserve his eligibility for another season. So he's not going to play the rest of the season. There's a lot of details out there that are still kind of really indeterminate of what exactly happened. UNLV's denying that they owe him money, and the family saying that they owe him money. They paid him $3,000 instead of $100,000. That he was. There's a lot. It's a lot of really gross details, and I think a lot of this falls on the NCAA for not nipping this in the bud. And I'm actually surprised that this is the first time it's actually happened to somebody or some school, or there's been some indiscretion that's actually been reported, because it's probably happened a lot, but it just hasn't been as public as this situation was. So, really sad that it came to this. And also, it's really sad that President Circa, I think his name's Derek Stevens, comes out and basically says, yeah, we'll pay $100,000 for Matthew Sluka to stay on the team. And UNLV basically said, no, we're not doing that. We're not in the business with the Sluka family. We're moving forward with the rest of the season. So UNLV's actually got a pretty interesting game this week that we'll kind of talk about. I'm not going to go really nuts and bolts into, because I'm really still trying to learn about some of these Mountain West schools that are coming into the Pac-12. But yeah, that was a sad situation. The news didn't really stop with UNLV this week, as there was a rumor that as the Pac-12 was trying to rebuild itself, they already added 4 teams. They added San Diego State, Colorado State, Boise State, and now they add Utah State, and I'm forgetting somebody else. And it's just it's been a really crazy time for realignment for the Pac-12. So they add Utah State this week, but UNLV and Air Force opt to stay in the Mountain West, which is, kind of a surprise. But they were getting more money, so it doesn't really, shock me at all that they're actually going to stay. Fresno State was the 4th team, and they're playing this weekend actually at UNLV, which will be an interesting game. So, but yeah, it's just like, I hate what all of this has done, and in terms of the Pac-12, it's not really turning out the way that they wanted to. I think they're going to be okay, but a lot of this started when they got blindsided by UCLA and USC a couple years ago, right around or before Pac-12 Media Day, and I don't think this conference has ever really recovered from that. They had an opportunity in 2021 with Oklahoma and Texas left for the SEC. There was multiple opportunities on the table. I stood by new Commissioner George Kliavkoff for the whole time that they were going to go by, and the wait-and-see approach just did not pay off for this conference. And now you're in a working partnership with the Mountain West, and you're poaching teams, and because of the exit fees, UNLV, I mean, granted, they're overpaying a little bit for UNLV. UNLV has got some value because of the Vegas market, but they're not that great of a football team, and their basketball program's been kind of mid since the 90s when they had their boom period. So it's not like, it's a catastrophic failure, but it's just like you go back and piece this thing together 3 years, and it's just like this conference, and this is why I do this show, is because it's like you could just look at, there's a lot of great football out here on the West Coast, and to see all these teams dispersed across the United States, it's unfortunate. It really is. It's really sad. So yeah, the UNLV situation, like, and Air Force obviously getting a significant share of the new pie of the teams that reaffirm their commitment to the Mountain West, and good for them that conference is staying together. I just don't want to see anything just crumble apart anymore. It's kind of getting tired because we all know where this thing is going. This is going to basically be minor league professional football. That's really what it's going to be. Like, everything is just going to be there's going to be a couple conferences that matter, which really is shaping up to be the Big Ten and the SEC. And then everything else is just going to be like, secondary. And it's just like, we're kind of just like buying time for that. But I like that these smaller conferences are staying together, because that still does matter in the sport of college football. So it's neat to see a school like Utah State join the Pac-12 this week. My sister obviously spent some time out in Utah. She had nothing but exemplary things to say about Utah State. So Very excited to see that program that has some level of football tradition, not so much a basketball tradition. Well, actually, more actually it does. Who am I kidding? Like, I mean, some of their great runs. I mean, Craig Smith had a great run there. Ryan Odom had a great run there. Like, it's Utah State's a decent athletics program. So that's a good ad for the Pac-12, and we'll see where they go to try to get to 8, because that's going to make them an actual recognized FBS conference for in terms of playoff positioning that they've got a couple years to get to. So, sort of recapping, we like to go through I like to go through my rankings, and I like to also go through where the actual ranked teams are in the polls. So USC goes down after their disappointing loss. I went through that against Michigan, where they surrendered less than 50 passing yards in that game. It was really just a really disheartening loss, and they were trailing for most of that game. But they came back. They fought hard. They're going to be a good team this year, but that was a head scratcher. So they fall from 11 to 13. Utah moves up to 10 from 12 after a win on the road at Oklahoma State, one of the most impressive wins of the season, where they dominated Oklahoma State without 3 of their best players. That was impressive. Oregon moves up from 9 to 8, despite not playing a game. I did like what I saw from the Ducks before the bye week. They get to come out here to California and play UCLA in really like one of the first editions of Big Ten After Dark. They're playing this game at 11 Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific. So good luck staying up for that, you Big Ten maniacs, if you want to watch West Coast football. A lot of crazy shit does happen during Pac-12 After Dark. These are 2 Pac-12 schools now playing an old school rivalry now in the Big Ten. So that's going to be really interesting to watch, and we'll get to that game here at the end. All right, so let's get to my rankings here. I did try to do a 6-pack, but I can run through these really quickly. I'll go through 12 to 1. So at 12, I have UCLA. UCLA is the worst team of this chunk of 12 teams that we have now that used to make up the Pac-12. UCLA is just not talented enough. They're just not. Like, they hung with LSU for about a half, and then LSU just overwhelmed them on talent. And it's just Deshaun Foster's going to have a really hard time this year, getting this team to win any number of games. They won a game. They barely beat Hawaii. Hawaii is one of the worst teams in the Mountain West. Like, it's going to be really hard for UCLA in the Big Ten to win a lot of games this year. And it sucks for Deshaun Foster, who really loves UCLA. And there's a lot of energy and hype behind the program, but they're just not that good right now. And it's just like you saw it against Indiana, who's a lot better than people think. But still, it's just like you've still got much tougher games on your schedule. And you've got Oregon this week. And yes, it's Big Ten After Dark, but Oregon is significantly more talented than UCLA. I don't expect that game to be close. Spoiler alert. I've got Colorado moving out of the basement to number 11. The reason why I can't ignore that was a thrilling and impressive, survival win by the Buffs to beat Baylor. But as I said, I stand by my point on the recap show. I just do not think that this team is very good beyond a couple of pieces like Travis Hunter and Shedeur Sanders. And if they get big-headed, they're going to get in their own heads. And they're going to convince themselves in this game going to UCF that they can pull it off. And I just think UCF is they've got a really talented quarterback in their own right. Gus Malzahn is a really good head coach. I think Colorado is in for a kind of a rude awakening. It's nice to see that they started 3-1 again. But that Nebraska loss is still very glaring, and I think heightens a lot of the issues with this team. And when they play some of the better teams in the Big 12, they're going to get, humbled. I have Stanford at 10. I moved Stanford up because that was an impressive win to go all the way across the country to Syracuse, beat a 2-0 team in a manner that they did. I still don't think the Stanford team is particularly very good. They get Clemson this week, which is, oh boy, you're going to Death Valley. That's a hard place to play. So I got Stanford at 10. I have Oregon State at 9. Nice rebound getting up off the mat. You beat a bad Purdue team, but still, that's a Power 4 win. I give them credit. I love what Trent Bray is doing. Their running game is awesome. They run all over the place. They've got 2 really decent backs, so that's a strong team. Arizona State, I dropped to 8. I had a feeling that this was going to come. They fought a decent amount against Texas Tech, but it was really like their first really true nasty road test. Like they had a hard time with Texas State, but Texas State is like is an FBS team, but they're not like at the level of a Power 4. Like they're in the Sun Belt, so like you shouldn't have a hard time with that. And It was nice that they started the season 3-0. They already have as many wins as they did last year, but this is the portion like a Colorado where I think Arizona State's going to have a hard time competing with some of the upper echelon teams in the Big 12. I got Cal at 7. That was a disheartening loss. They had that game. They missed 2 field goals. They only put up 9 points in the game. Florida State was begging you to win that game, and Cal just could not muster up enough offense. They had a chance at the end to potentially score a touchdown, but it just wasn't in the cards, and they lose. And, I still think Cal is going to be a pesky little team. They've got some talent. I love Jaden Ott, man. They've got some talent on that team. But yeah, that was a game that you got to get at Florida State. Even if it was a tough spot for them to go across the country, Florida State was begging you to win that game. So I dropped Cal to 7. Arizona's at 6. They were off last week. They got an interesting game against Utah this week, which is going to be very interesting. The first edition of Big 12 After Dark. You got multiple old Pac-12 matchups this week, which is really interesting and kind of disheartening for me to watch. But Arizona, I still think they're incredibly, incredibly talented. Coming off the bye to face Utah is going to be a really interesting test for them to see if they were able to rebound off that loss to Kansas State. So I got the Wildcats at 6, Washington at 5. Washington gets a nice win over Northwestern, so much so that I didn't even preview it last week. They've got a really interesting test coming up here later tonight against Rutgers, which we'll get into. Like the quarterback, I like the running back. I like the coach. There's still just a lot of questions in a lot of different places because we really don't know a whole hell of a lot. They've only played really one meaningful game of Power 5, one really competitive game, and the two and they're 1-1 in their 2 notable Power 5. I mean, I guess you could say I would consider Washington State, even though they're not considered at the Power 5 level. Washington State's still a Power 5 team. But they're 1-0 in their Power 4 games this year. They get Rutgers on the road, which is in a Friday night nationally televised game. This is going to be a big opportunity for Washington. I got Washington State in my top 4, man. John Mateer's playing out of his mind. At what point do we consider him a legitimate Heisman contender? Because he's playing at that level right now. He had 500 yards of total offense in that game against San Jose State. It's insane what this guy's been able to do. And they play Boise State in a really, really under the radar game. For not just, West Coast implications, this is for college football playoff implications. Because, I mean, that's a big-time game that we'll preview a little bit later on here in the show. I got USC dropping a 3. It's just, you have to win that game at Michigan. I know it's your first Big Ten road game, and you're a little bit overwhelmed physically by them. They didn't get over 50 yards passing. Man, that's just... You just can't do that. The quarterback couldn't throw the ball. And you had that game, and Lincoln Riley called a couple of screens that didn't get completed because Miller Moss just got overwhelmed with pressure. If you run the ball doesn't hit the ground. You just hand the ball off to Woody Marks, and you're fine. And you run more clock off, and who's to say that they don't miss a tackle there, and they're able to score there at the end of the game. It's a really disheartening loss for USC. So I dropped them to 3. I have Oregon still at 2 because... I still have some questions about them, but they were really impressive in that Oregon State game. I expect them to do pretty well against UCLA this weekend. And then at number 1, I have the Utes. That is one of the most impressive wins of the year that I saw at Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State was rolling offensively with Ollie Gordon and Alan Bowman, and up until the last handful of minutes of that game, they allowed 3 points. 3 points. And it's just... Yeah, it was a 3-point game at the end because they had a couple of late touchdowns because they were kind of just hanging on. But to do that without 3 of your best players and your starting quarterback, one of them being your starting quarterback, I'm done doubting Kyle Whittingham. Every time I doubt him, he always comes back at me. So maybe I should listen to what I've known for the last 5 years is that Kyle Whittingham is one of the best head coaches in the NFL, not in the NFL, in college football. So, all right, let's get through these games. Washington's at Rutgers. This is one of the big games for Rutgers. They're undefeated on the season. This is a tough spot to go all the way across the country to Piscataway on a short week to play this game on Friday night on Fox. So this is going to be a nationally visible and televised game. It's a big opportunity for Washington. This Rutgers team has really, really impressed me. They've really, really impressed me. They had a nice win at Virginia Tech, which is a tough place to play. And I just think, yeah, that place is going to be juiced. They haven't been juiced there in a long, long time, probably like 10 to 15 years. Since, ironically, the last time Greg Schiano was there. Greg Schiano is one of the best coaches that university's ever seen. So, yeah, give me Rutgers here to win this game. I just hope that Washington keeps this close, because this feels a lot like the Arizona Kansas State game, Friday night, hostile environment on the road for a Washington team and this time Washington's got to go really a lot further than Arizona had to go to Kansas State on that Friday night. It just feels like this is a prime opportunity for Rutgers to just send a message to the rest of the Big Ten that they could, potentially be somewhat of a factor in the Big Ten. But in terms of Washington, it's just like there's a lot of unknown with this team still. And you drop that game to Washington State. It's nice that you get up off the mat against Northwestern, but Rutgers is definitely a big step up from what Northwestern is. So I would have Rutgers winning this game. We'll go with some of the new Pac-12 teams and what they're doing this weekend. San Diego State's at Central Michigan. San Diego State's just not that good, to be frank. They're 1-2. Oregon State beat them. Oregon State's one of the lower echelon teams in this old version of the Pac-12. Going to Central Michigan, I would take Central Michigan in that game. Central Michigan's actually had a pretty decent season so far. So, yeah, it's just like San Diego State's a good ad. I think it's more of a prime ad on the basketball front. We'll see how the football team does under new head coach Sean Lewis, but it's been a little bit of a slog for them to start the season. Fresno State at UNLV. This is a very interesting game. Fresno State's won 3 straight since they lost at Michigan, and they were in that game. They were in that game until the very end. Michigan was struggling. So UNLV, you have to wonder how distracted this team is based off of all the stuff with, Matthew Sluka. But they've made the statement that they believe in their new quarterback. So I'm going to go with Barry Odom and UNLV at home here to win this game. But I definitely have a lot of reservations about this, because you got to wonder like how distracted this team is from what transpired throughout the week with their quarterback, just really unceremoniously and just like out of nowhere just leaving. So we'll see. It's a real test. And if UNLV, this would be a really impressive win for UNLV, because then next week they go to Syracuse, which is going to be a huge game for this program. If they go in there 4-0, that's a monster statement, especially given all that transpired this week. But I'll go with the Rebels there to go to 4-0 somehow. Wisconsin at USC. This is the big CBS game. So USC hosting a 12:30 game. It feels like all of last year they were playing at night. So getting a big prime slot here, middle of the day on CBS is big. Wisconsin, like we saw them against Alabama. This team's going to have a problem moving the ball now that Tyler Van Dyke's out for the year. I like Luke Fickell as a coach, but I think they're fighting an uphill battle here. USC's going to be angry. They're going to be frustrated. I would anticipate that Wisconsin will probably get handled pretty decently this weekend by USC. Colorado going to UCF. Listen, it was a nice win for Colorado at home, but you shouldn't have been down at home by 2 touchdowns to Baylor. UCF's a different team. KJ Jefferson's a great quarterback. They've got a great running game. They've got a great head coach. I think UCF handily beats Colorado in this game. Let's go further down. Stanford at Clemson. Clemson's just been playing so well since the Georgia game. I think Dabo Sweeney might have figured something out here, because they got some good receivers. They've got, Phil Maffa, their running back, got dinged up. I don't know if there might be some question as to whether they play, but Kate Klubnik has been awesome since that clunker against Georgia. But everybody's going to play bad against Georgia. Let's get real. Like, Georgia's one of the best, one of the 4 best teams in the country. Like, they've consistently been one of the 4 best teams in the country. And now I got to train myself to not talk about it, because we care about 12 best, or I don't even know if it's going to be 12 best, because Group of 5 may not even be in the top 12. So, but yeah, I don't take a lot of stock in that game anymore, and I've started to see Clemson get further away from it. I do think Clemson's a lot better than people give them credit for. They've played really, really well since the last since that really big clunker of a loss. So I think Stanford's in for a rude awakening here. They had a nice win. They had extra time to prepare for this. If Troy Taylor goes to Clemson and wins this game, I might need to rewrite my opinion on Stanford. And I know Troy Taylor's a really good head coach, but this is a tall, tall order to go to Clemson and win a football game. All right, let's do Washington State at Boise State. Listen, this is Washington State's really first big, tough test of the season. I mean, the rivalry game, that crazy things happen in rivalry games. And I give them credit. It was a tough test. It was a neutral site. But this is a true, true road game at Boise State. New team who's going to be joining them in the Pac-12. They've got a Heisman-level running back in Ashton Jeanty. I hate to do this, but I think this is where Washington State drops their first game of the season. I think Boise State, it's going to be, especially considering San Jose State really just messed around with them for a long, long, long time in that game. It's going to be really hard to stop Jeanty in this Boise State attack. So I would take Boise State to win that game. Arizona at Utah. Listen, I doubted them going to Oklahoma State. I know Arizona's had a bye to talk about this, but I can't get that Kansas State game out of my head. And I can't get that Oklahoma State game out of my head. So based off that alone, and especially if Cam Rising plays, I think Utah wins this game pretty handily over Arizona. It's just, like I said, Arizona, like it's going to be interesting to see how they pick themselves off the mat. Going to Utah, that's a tough ask for them, especially coming off of just such a demoralizing loss going into that bye. And then we've got Oregon at UCLA. I won't give this too much time. UCLA is just they're just not that good, man. Like, it sucks because I've grown up in Southern California. I've been around this program, and Deshaun Foster brings a lot more energy and passion to this fan base than Chip Kelly did as the head coach. I just never got that, and that's why the attendance was down. But it's just like this team is just not very good. They're not very good. Like, Indiana comes in, blows them out. You've got, they were in the game with LSU for about a half, but I think that's partially because we kind of overrate LSU. LSU's just a much, much more talented team. And then you barely squeak by Hawaii, who's not that great of a Mountain West team. It's just Oregon off of a bye. They just played their best game of the season against Oregon State, so they're coming off of a bye. You know Dan Lanning's going to be ready. He's going to be prepared. The only reservation I have about this game is that it's being played at 8 p.m. local time out here in Los Angeles. But I don't think that's going to matter for Oregon. I think Oregon's going to overwhelm them. Dylan Gabriel's going to have an awesome, awesome game, solidify more of his Heisman campaign, and I think the Ducks will win, and they'll go to 4-0. So that's Week 5 in the now old Pac-12. We'll have a lot more reaction to this over the weekend in regards to how these games go. Like, share, and subscribe here on the Off the Mic Sports Network. A lot of great sports and sports entertainment, wrestling content here on the channel. Thanks for all the love and support. I love you guys. I'll talk to you guys real soon. Bye-bye.